Welcome back to the DLLS Mavs podcast. It's time to dial up the Stein line with our national NBA insider, Marc Stein. You can always dial him up on X at the Stein line, as we are just 9 days away from the NBA trade deadline. What's the latest with Anthony Davis heading into the trade deadline?
I think the Mavs will keep the lines open in case something materializes there. At this point, I don't think there is anything that you would label as especially active in terms of AD talks. I suppose that could change, 9 days left, like you said. So until the deadline actually passes, I'm not going to shut the door on anything. But, there's been a lot of chatter about what Rich Paul wants. Rich Paul has been adamant in saying that he has not demanded a trade. He certainly didn't demand one by this week, as was reported in some corners. I mean, that would have made absolutely no sense. Why would there be a trade demand the week before that? This must happen the week before the deadline. That just didn't make any sense. My best read on it is I think AD would prefer to not have to go through another in-season change. I really don't want to speak for him because I have not spoken to him directly about it. That's why I'm wording this as my best read of the situation. I think that he would prefer to stay put for the rest of the season, and then the Mavs can take a longer look at this in the offseason. But look, there's also been so much chatter about it that, could some team decide to get back in the mix here and open conversations? The Mavs have constantly messaged that they're not just going to give him away. They're not just going to do a deal that makes salary cap sense. They don't just want to give Anthony Davis away, who obviously has had one injury after another since he's been a Mav, but has also shown flashes of what he can do. And when he's healthy and when he's good, he is still a two-way force. So I think the Mavs have also let it be known that if no trade materializes, they are more than ready to take this into the offseason, see where things stand after the lottery, and plot their course from there. And of course, there would most likely be a full-time GM in charge by then to run that process, which is something they don't have right now. They're doing this by committee. In effect, Patrick Dumont is the one with the final vote. He's got a cabinet of, obviously you've got the co-GMs with Matt Riccardi and Michael Finley, and Jason Kidd has a very loud voice, and, Cuban is consulting to some degree. And, basically Patrick is taking on board all these takes and views and opinions, and ultimately he's got to cast the deciding vote.
What could this mean for Kyrie Irving as he continues to work back from his torn ACL? Jason Kidd mentioning last week that he's looking to potentially come back after the All-Star break, which would be, of course, beginning on February the 13th. So their first game after the break could be February 19th against the Bucks on the road, or against the Minnesota Timberwolves on February 20th on the road. What's the latest in terms of Kyrie Irving and his potential return and what that means for this season?
I think in the perfect scenario, the Mavs would love to get a look at just have a glimpse of what it looks like. Like, it's amazing to think we're almost a year removed from the trade. You don't even have to elaborate. The trade is all you have to say. Everybody knows what we're talking about. We're almost a year removed from that. AD and Kyrie Irving, let's not even bring Cooper Flagg into the discussion yet. AD and Kyrie Irving have only played in one game together, over 3 quarters and 20-something minutes. And that's it. And so they haven't even seen AD and Kyrie together, really. And I think they would love to at least have a glimpse of what it looks like. But the reality is this is not a perfect world. And there are a bunch of timelines here all over the place. And so the Mavs have believed that AD is going to be available to come back at some point in March, as long as rehab keeps going the way it's going. Kyrie Irving, when we see glimpses of him on the practice floor, he's clearly made good progress, as Jason Kidd said and as you cited. You would think at some point in February he would be ready to play. But if the Mavs at that point are in, what did I call it last night in my story? I took it a step further. It was actually for you, because I know you love it.
Draft positioning prioritization.
Yes, draft positioning prioritization mode. If that's where the Mavs are by the time Kyrie and of course AD are ready to come back, you do have to factor in the standings to some degree if you're Dallas. But then with Kyrie, there's the other side of the coin, which is Kyrie sustained that knee tear in early March. If he doesn't play again for the rest of the season, that certainly would help the Mavs in terms of lottery positioning. But does that really help Kyrie Irving? That means he will be out for nearly 20 months by the time he comes back. Some players, that's fine. Some players, that's daunting. And only I do not know where Kyrie stands on that. He's, I would imagine he's going to have a loud voice in that decision. Does Kyrie Irving go to the Mavs and say, guys, I'd really like to play 5-6 games just because I don't want to go 20 full months without NBA basketball? And like I said, especially with Kyrie, I would imagine he would have a very strong say in when he comes back. So after the trade deadline and after the All-Star break, the Mavs are going to have a lot of decisions to make still, even if AD is still on the roster. The Kyrie situation, I mean, there are a lot of variables and things that they're going to have to figure out.
So let's play some rapid fire with some of the guys that have been in the news in terms of potential trades as the February 9th trade deadline, or excuse me, February 5th trade deadline is approaching. Let's start with Daniel Gafford. What is the latest with him and how teams are interested in him around the league?
It's certainly not as noisy around Daniel Gafford as it was earlier in the season, but I would also say I'm not going to just totally buy into the quiet because so many teams are searching for big men. I mean, just off the top of my head, Boston, Indiana, Toronto in the East have all shown interest in finding a big, and it doesn't stop there. So could Gafford still be on the move? I think we have to keep open that possibility. But early in the season, when I routinely said Daniel Gafford is generating the most robust trade interest of any Maverick, I would probably shift that now to Naji Marshall. The way Naji Marshall has played, his contract is very team friendly. He has been outstanding, but as I reported this week, I reported this on Sunday, not yet last night in my Sunday notes, Naji Marshall and Max Christie have both established themselves. They are very valued members of the post-Luka era. They play very well alongside Cooper Flagg. They fit in very well. Their games mesh. They've both just got, Naji and Max Christie have just gotten better and better and better. And so the trade threshold for either of them, and I do think there are teams out there interested in both, it's very, very high. I mean, I think you have to be in a zone where really, if we're going to talk untouchables, Cooper Flagg is in a class by himself there.
True.
I think Kyrie, there's really no trade discussion surrounding Kyrie when we haven't actually seen him play in almost a year. And I think, it's been messaged that the Mavs, again, no matter what happens with AD, I do think the Mavs would love to see what Kyrie Irving looks like next to Cooper Flagg. So Naji Marshall and Max Christie, I think, are in kind of a category of their own. The Mavs do not want to trade them, but it's the heart of trade season. It's the last 9 days. The phone is going to ring. Teams are going to probe. Teams are going to make offers. And look, with Naji specifically, I've been told it would take at least a first to pry him away. And he's played that well. Like, there is a shortage of two-way wings that are available in the NBA. The whole trade season has just been Keon Ellis. That's been all the talk because he's the only one who is seemingly confirmed to be available. But, the Mavs will have a decision to make because like I said, I do not think they want to trade Naji Marshall, but he's played so well that he's making the phone ring.
Last couple guys before we let you go here. So we've mentioned a lot with Gafford and obviously Naji Marshall, Max Christie. What about a couple other guys in terms of Klay Thompson, maybe Caleb Martin to a degree, who's played well over the last 2-3 weeks at this rate, D'Angelo Russell, who's become essentially not a part of the rotation anymore as well. What about those individuals as we head into the trade deadline?
Klay has been fantastic since the move to the bench. He's been shooting the ball great over the last 2 months, really longer than that probably. But the reality is, for all those guys, if you have an extra, they all have extra years on their deal beyond this season. I think all three have at least one more year on their deal, and that's going to complicate the trade market. I mean, that we are in the apron era. Now, I would say, on one hand, we've only seen one trade in season, Trae Young to Washington. That's it. But the last 2 trade deadlines were also under the apron rules, and we saw an average of 26.5 trades in season. So I think, and look, the bulk of the business, nearly 80% of the business, even the last 2 years, it happened in the final week. So we are still going to see 10 plus trades between now and 2 p.m. Central on February 5th. We'll probably see more than that. I think we'll see plenty of activity. It's just moving a little slower than it normally is, but it's just difficult, and it's difficult to move players with extra money on their deal. That's just the reality. So I don't foresee Klay again. Klay has played so well here over the last, I don't know, X amount of time. You probably know the exact numbers better than me, that maybe someone decides they do need a shooter. I don't want to speak it into existence because I'm a Klay fan and I love having him here, so I really don't want to talk about it. But but I don't know.
There are real contenders that could use a Klay Thompson. I'm thinking about Detroit, particularly, that could use
no question.
Klay
There's
Thompson,
no
sure.
question. But the thought is, can we handle next year's 17-ish million?
Sure.
The issue is not. The issue is, I mean, obviously, teams always want two-way wings. They always want size. They always want shooting. There's lots of teams that would love to have Klay Thompson, but it's just a matter of, are you willing to take on an extra year at whatever, 16, 17 mil, whatever that number is that I can't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, over 17 million going into that final year. He'll be on an expiring deal going into what is the 26-27 season. Mark, we appreciate the time as always. Look forward to talking to you. We got back-to-back on Wednesday and Thursday as the Mavericks take on the Wolves and the Hornets on Wednesday and Thursday. We appreciate your time, and we'll talk to you then.
Sounds good. Let's do it.